Hello, Hoovians, and welcome to the third channel. Hooray! Hey. You've seen all the Monty Python videos, you thought, oh, he's getting a little bit repetitive, but you've still returned. Hooray! I haven't bored you to sleep. Now, today, we're doing another special person. He's best known for RHLSTP, Richard Herring's Leicester Square Theatre podcast. It's the one, the only, Richard Herring.
Hello, thank you for having me. Here I am.
Yes, you're welcome. Now, for people who may not know who you are, would you be able to just give a brief rundown of who?
I am a comedian. I've been a comedian for 30 years, I would say, maybe a little longer now. I used to be in a double act with a guy called Stuart Lee. Don't know what happened to him. And then I've gone solo. I've done lots of writing in my time, written scripts for people like Al Murray and other people. And now I'm doing a lot of podcasting and experimental stuff, as well as sort of slightly more mainstream stuff. And yes, carrying on doing stand-up and whatever else I fancy. I'm writing a sitcom for Radio 4 at the moment.
Ooh. Now, how did you become a comedian? Where did your journey begin?
Well, I was always interested in comedy, and I liked funny people right from a very early age, and I loved making people laugh. I remember with one of the puppets I now use, this is my donkey puppet that's in my ridiculous Twitch of Fun show. I remember playing with those behind the sofa and making my grandmother and my mother really laugh, although they were laughing at me, I realized in hindsight. But I really liked the feeling. And I always liked people who made me laugh, and I really liked comedy stuff more than anything else, you know. So I was a big fan of Monty Python, and then, you know, I discovered through records, because they weren't on TV anymore, and Pete and Dud, who were very rude, and then the young ones came out on TV and with Rick Mail and all that lot, and that really got me into the idea of wanting to do something in comedy. And I did stuff at school, and then I went to university and I met Stuart Lee, and we did stuff at university, and so we just thought we'd give it a crack. So we started pretty young. We came out of university, I was 20, 21, and I sort of gave myself 5 years to see if I could make a living out of it. And we did. I suppose we just, by about 5 years, we probably were just about making a living out of it. And within 10 years, I think I'd broken even, essentially. But then it was too late to do anything else.
Yeah, right. So, as a comedian, how do you write your material?
It's sort of just observing things and letting things come to you, really, I suppose. Sometimes and you have a life experience like that, and you think, oh, well, here's the funny stuff from this, and here's the funny experiences I've had from that, and you kind of think there might be a show in that. And sometimes just something occurs to you. I don't write many one-line jokes, but they're usually like a collision of two ideas, like something's happening and you're sort of slightly away with the fairies, and then two ideas crash into each other and you realize that they work together. So it's a lot of different things, but and there's an element of just sitting down and trying to make it work. I do a lot of my stand-up and a lot of my online stuff by improvising on stage, basically. So I'll even if I've got an idea, I'll go on stage and I'll just mess around with it on stage and see what happens. And I find that's the most efficient way to write, because in the white hot heat of having an audience there, you do come up with jokes that sitting at home with all the distractions and trying to come up with stuff is much harder. But you know, deadlines come up. You know, I meant to have been writing this sitcom that I'm writing for the last 3 months, and I've done one scene, and I've got to do it by October, November, 6 episodes. So what will happen is I'll write a lot of it in October, I'm guessing. But when suddenly I go, oh, I'm going to look like an idiot if I don't get this down. But so it's just spotting. It's just, and I write a blog every day, which I've done for 18 or 19 years, and that's just a good way of training yourself to try and see what's funny. And, you know, I try and write about one funny thing from the previous day, if I can think of anything. And if I can't think of anything, I just try and write about something and see if I can make it funny. And by giving yourself the permission to fail with that as well, it's not important if it isn't funny, but occasionally one of them will be funny. And that'll spring something off. So, you know, there's lots of different ways that comedy comes. But it's basically just something in your brain goes, oh, hold on, is there something in that? You know, well, why is this happening? You're asking questions all the time. And because you're doing it, I don't have another job. You know, I'm able to dedicate all my time to this. And sometimes you just need to go off and do something else, and something will occur to you because you're not thinking about your work. But yeah, I find it. I'm trying to sit down at my desk and write at the moment, and I'm finding that very difficult.
Yeah, and it seems to thing. But now going away from that for a second, the question that's been burning on my mind is, what's your favourite cheese?
Good. That's an excellent question. I don't know where you're getting these questions, but that is the best one so far that you've asked. That could be written by a professional. I like halloumi cheese, and I particularly like it with chili flakes in it. You've got to griddle it or cook it in some way for it to be nice. But I think it tastes nice. It makes a sound, and it's almost like you're getting 5 senses in one. It feels a bit weird. There's a sound. There's a sort of, suppose there's a smell. It can't talk. Is that one of the senses? It can't see. You can see it though.
Yeah.
So, and when you eat it, you can travel in time. So that's the sixth sense.
Yeah,
It's nice though. I like it.
Yeah, I quite like brie cheese because it's very
Yeah, brie's
brie.
nice.
Yeah, it's very cheesy.
Brie's nice. Do you like brie with? I mean, brie doesn't have any bits in it, but I kind of like Cambozola brie or something like that with a bit of blue veins in it and stuff like that. I prefer that to. I find brie a little bit. If you bake a brie, it's nice. That's put a camembert or a brie in the oven.
Yeah,
I'd recommend you try that, Tom.
Yeah, cheese is one of those things that it's like a love-hate relationship. You either love it, or some of it does smell, really.
Yeah.
Now going away from cheese a little bit to going away to
okay, all right, fine.
To eat matter. Have you ever seen Bigfoot?
No, I haven't. I mean, I've seen pictures and I've seen that video of it walking through the forest and looking at the camera, which I'm not sure is real. I've met Brian Blessed, who I asked that question to, and he didn't really he answered a different question, but apparently he has seen a Bigfoot, but he was the one person I asked that question to that I thought would give me a story about it, but then he went on about something else. And I don't think revealed whether he'd seen Bigfoot or not. So no, I'm not convinced Bigfoot's real, but you've got to keep believing, Tom. You've got to keep searching.
It's like the Yeti, a mystery. Who knows whether he's real or not? Yeah, no one knows. And speaking of your podcast, how did you get into the world of podcasting? Because you've got more podcasts than I've got YouTube channels.
It was really, again, it was sort of 2008. And it was really just because I was getting fed up. I was writing lots of scripts and putting in lots of proposals for radio and TV and getting a certain distance with them. And some of them were getting on TV, but it would take a long time. And I just thought I had a lot of ideas. And I was working with a journalist called Andrew Collins at the time, and we'd done a radio show together. And he just realized how easy it was to do it. And we said, I think initially we thought, should we just do a chat and maybe we'll get a radio show out of it, which we eventually did. But that was, but I think I was just sort of, it appealed to me because obviously you can create something and put it up, almost immediately now, absolutely immediately. As it's happening, I'm making up jokes as I go along in my current work. And there's no gatekeepers, and it doesn't have to be broad appeal. So what I really like about podcasts is I can do something like the Leicester Square Theatre one, which is a bit more mainstream, and I'm chatting with celebrities. And I can do a sketch show like As It Occurs to Me, which again has a bit more appeal, but is still quite niche. And then I can do something like play myself at snooker or collect stones off a field, or anything, and then explore that. And I'm finding that really fascinating, interesting to do, and to see whether it's possible to make comedy out of something very repetitive and dull, where the parameters don't really change, but where you still attempt to be original and find something to do. So it just, for me, a lot of comedians at the time would say to me, well, you're not getting paid, why are you doing this, you're crazy. But for me, it was more the artistic expression of it and the freedom of it. And I realized quite quickly that it was having a knock-on effect with my live gigs, in that people would listen to my podcast and then they'd know I was doing a live gig and they'd come to the live gig. So I immediately thought, well, that's fine. That's good. And it led to a little bit of other work. So I thought, actually, it's like a little advert for myself as well. And it's a good way of, same thing with the blog. I started writing the blog thinking, well, if people are coming to a website every day, then, they might buy a DVD, or they might, buy a book or whatever I was doing at the time. but then actually it's obviously turned into quite a big business, and luckily, because I was a bit ahead of the curve and have built up an audience, certainly in this last year, it's been an absolute savior for me, and I've been able to carry on working from home. I've still got my listeners who will listen. I've got adverts in it, so I am, we are making money, although we're plowing most of it back into making more stuff. So it felt to me, even whatever it is, 13, 14 years ago, that there was a lot of potential, and that possibly it could lead to you being able to do more than just, chat with a bloke in an attic or whatever. I think that's been proven right. Whether I'm young enough to be able to exploit that too much into the future, I don't know. But I think, like, for someone of your generation, I think this is, if I wanted to be on the radio when I was your age, I would have had to somehow get to the BBC and persuade them to give me a show, which we did in my early 20s, but it was a long haul. So you can practice. The bad thing about the internet, I think, I suppose, and it doesn't have to be, but your early juvenilia stuff is always up there.
Yeah.
And when you're older, if all my 18-year-old comedy sketches were online, I'd feel a little embarrassed by them, I think. So I think I'm lucky in that I didn't have, or worse, I think that's the thing with the internet is, and now people combing back through the past to try and work out what transgressions you made in the past, is a sort of weird thing. I think when we've all hopefully on a journey where we learn, and also, historically things were different in the 1980s than they were in the 2010s, which is a very good thing, because things are generally speaking a lot better now. So I think it's a double-edged sword, but I think the ability to be able to just practice, and I've done that with RHLSTP, is just, I've done probably 500 interviews across the Edinburgh version and the London version and the online version. And I think I'm a lot better at being an interviewer, or at least doing this kind of show. It's a chat show. It's a show where we both chat, really. Than I would have been. So you learn, you get better. If you're good, you build an audience. If you come up with something really good, that might go viral. And I really love the fact that there's lots of people creating interesting stuff, which I don't think is happening so much on TV outside of sitcoms and comedy dramas. That sort of short form sketch stuff and stand up stuff isn't really happening on TV anymore. So it's great that it can happen on the internet and people can get discovered that way. And some great people have been discovered that way. And, and podcasts are through the roof for some people. Mine's fairly modest by comparison with a lot of them, but, it's still doing pretty well, I guess.
Yeah. And you mentioned there about playing snooker with yourself. Do you ever get competitive with yourself? Do you ever think, I want to win against myself?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't work if I didn't. Each player, I mean, they were, to begin with, it was me one versus me two, and that was just, to begin with, it was audio only. I thought it's quite important that no one could see. I liked it when people in America listened to it, because they don't really even have snooker, so they had to kind of try and imagine what was going on. I'm not very good at snooker. I'm not very good at describing snooker. So that was what appealed to me. But it was very important that both players, I can't, I have favorite players, but I can't influence it, because each player who plays wants to win.
Yeah.
So if they weren't trying to win, I don't think it would work. So, I mean, Me 11 does pretty well, who's the female me. She's been in we've done tournaments over lockdown, and she's been in the semi-finals, I think 3 or 4 times out of the 4 or 5 tournaments. But she's never got beyond the semi-final. So then, it'd be interesting to look at it after another 10,000 or so matches and see if there is any unconscious bias going on. But I don't think there is, because Me 11 would win every time, I think.
Yeah, and with having a video version, have you ever thought of putting it in black and white just to confuse people even more?
Well, but that's snooker used to be on TV in black and white. It was only when colour TV came in that snooker became really popular in the UK. And I remember, I remember having black and white TVs, and I remember getting our first colour TV. That's how old I am. I mean, that's a good way to get around the filming of it. Though again, it's sort of set up Twitch to do with the International Women's Day, when's International Men's Day thing, so we could film that. And I thought maybe we'll get to do some other stuff with it. So I was very fortunate to. A lot of things just have fallen right for me by accident, including podcasting. I didn't think podcasting would lead anyway, and it wasn't like this is a brilliant business idea. In 14 years' time, I'll be earning thousands of pounds for this that I can plow into other making my own content. So it's all happened by accident. But I think that's what makes it fun though as well.
Yeah, and for me, I've got at the moment of me talking, I've got 9 YouTube channels and 5
Good.
podcasts, which people ask me where I have the time, and I never know. But for me, it all just like fell into place because I'm a massive Apple fan, so I just shoved in an apple, and then I was away with it, and it's really interesting. And then starting this series on my across my channels, doing interviews with Alex on and people like that.
Yeah.
And for me, I've never actually ever felt like starstruck. I've always just been. It's always been funnier how calm I am. Have you ever felt starstruck?
Oh
with
yeah,
any of your
definitely,
interviews?
definitely. Yeah, no, there are some Michael Palin, who's like one of my absolute heroes. I was actually nervous that I would cry during that one because I've been trying to get him on for so long, and I was very emotional just thinking about it, and also just worried you'll screw it up. I have screwed up a few of them in terms of just the problem. My persona in the Rehelis debate is that I will ask questions that people, that can be pushing things a little bit far, and I can be a bit cheeky. The thing is, I always only have people on that I really admire and really like. So I hope they know that. So sometimes I feel that gives me license to be a little bit cheeky, but occasionally people haven't liked the cheekiness of it. I wasn't cheeky to Michael Palin, I don't think, but I was very nervous about meeting him. And some people like Terry Hall, who's a musician. I'm not really into music, but he's a musician I really love.
Yeah.
And that, because I'm not so into music as I am to comedy, I was sort of worried that I wouldn't do the best interview for the fans of Terry Hall, so you're sort of thinking of those things. But yeah, Michael Palin luckily was extremely lovely, and it was one of the highlights of my life, to get to meet him and get to talk to him for that long.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad, I think a lot of the people are people I've met before, or I'm casual acquaintance with or friends with, but sometimes I want to try and I'm like I want to branch out and get people outside of my immediate circle of friends, and which I've done quite a lot. So I think being prepared is the best way to avoid feeling too nervous. And so it's only if someone, like I say, if there's someone you think, well, I do know a fair amount about this person, but you've got to make sure you know nearly everything.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And then by doing that, you can hopefully find the cracks that allow you through to the new piece of information that they've never revealed, which has happened a few times on the podcast, which is, but I think, my guests know I'm not trying to tabloid them. I'm not trying to get them to admit something that they don't want to admit. I'm not trying to trick them. They know that, and we will edit out anything that people have accidentally said that they wish they hadn't said, and occasionally not put out podcasts of people who have embarrassed themselves in some way. So, I think that level of trust is very important. So if I was the kind of interviewer who was going, and I understand that, you had an affair with this person or whatever.
Yeah, it'd be too close to the bone.
Then you wouldn't get many more guests. So, but if people want to reveal stuff, which I think because the atmosphere, and it's interesting, again, accidentally having an audience, which I did partly thought, well, this is the only way to try and make a bit of money out of it, is to have people paying to come and watch it. But I think having the audience there changes the whole tone, makes people open up, and my audience is so nice. And again, I think this is the good thing about remaining slightly niche. If getting 100,000, 200,000 listeners a show is niche, but I suppose it is compared to TV. But you get people who really like the show and like me and like the guests, and they're not, and they like comedy, so they'll laugh at things that are funny, but they're not a pushover. They won't laugh at things that aren't funny, but they'll also listen to things that are serious as well, with respect. So I think I'm very lucky. I've got this lovely audience. It's just like an extra player on the pitch, that you've got this audience, and just somehow that relax. Sometimes the guests are nervous, and that relaxes them. They get laughs, and then they feel a lot happier, So
yeah. And when you interviewed he's now a Sir, but Sir Michael Palin,
yes.
was it fun doing the research? Because like for me, sometimes when I do research for not just interviews, for anything, it's half the time it's me watching TV.
Yeah. Well, that's what I love about it. Is I don't do a lot because I've got other stuff to do, but I'll spend at least the day and maybe the day before, and sometimes if there's a book out or something like that, I'll try and read the book. So that might leak into being longer than a day. But yeah, I get basically not so much from Michael Palin because I've seen all of his stuff, so it was nice to watch it again, of course. But what I find is when I've got newer people or people that I like one thing of, or or even I just know them peripherally and I've kind of liked them in general. When you then research them and find out everything they've done, it's really made me understand. I think it's easy as a comedian to think, why aren't I doing better? And you see this a lot. And I'm going, why is it everything's twisted against me? And this person's on TV and it's not fair. And then you actually sit down and watch what everyone else is doing, which is hard to do because there's so many people. And you realize, excuse me, you realize how talented people are. Nearly everyone I have on my podcast just surprises me with how brilliant they are, even though I've got them on because I like them. So that's when it's fun, when you research someone and you find out a whole new show that you weren't aware of. Generally speaking, I will. There's occasionally I've had a couple of American guests that I'm not so aware of. Brian Regan I'd never really heard of. But I really love catching up with him and finding out about his career. So it's it's an absolute joy to just. I'm a comedy fan, and I think that's probably why this works so much, in that and I've stayed being a comedy fan, and I'm not the kind of comedian who doesn't like to laugh at other comedians. I enjoy it when another comedian does well. And there's an element where you're going, they're still human. There's still an element where you're jealous of some people sometimes, but I think this show has made me much more appreciative of everyone else and less envious, and more determined to do well in my own stuff as well, because probably the thing that unites nearly everyone who's successful is they work really, really hard, and that's what the people who don't do well don't understand. And there's plenty of people who work very hard and don't become successful, to be fair. But there's a lot of people who don't work that hard and just think, this shit, I'm funny, why aren't I on TV? And it's because the people getting on TV are out there, even Jimmy Carr, who's on TV all the time, working all the time. I mean, he's working. I'm trying to book him for the podcast, and they've given me one potential date in October, I think, where he might be free in the evening.
Wow.
That's now, and that was 2 months ago. So there's a potential I might be able to get a theatre and get Jimmy Carr, but it's literally on his only day off in the whole of the autumn. So someone like him, just constantly working, and that's why he stays at the top of the game.
He is a very busy person. But now moving away from the audio realm for a bit, how did you get on to what it's like? How do I explain it to you? It's like a Gogglebox type program, but it's for comedy. But it's I think it's called we have been watching. How did you get onto that? What was your relationship?
Is that the thing I did with David Baddiel?
It's the one where you it's one for gold. It's one where Nish and James were also on it. Yeah,
I think they just asked us to do it, and it wasn't a bit. It was quite a while ago. They were obviously, their thinking was, let's take Gogglebox and have sort of slightly famous people being the people watching the TV, or comedians. They just asked me, and I like David, and we've worked together on a few things, certainly over the last 10 years. And at that point, we'd worked together on quite a few things. Just around that time, I've been to Armenia with him to do this show about trying to spend £10,000 in a day or something. It's based on the Brewster's Millions, or whatever that film's called. It was a slightly poor taste show in the economic circumstances where we had to spend lots of money, but it was money that went for us, luckily, into an economy that was struggling a little bit. So I didn't feel too bad about spending someone else's money in a day. It was kind of fun. So me and David had done a few things, and I always like working with David, and they just asked us, please. That's what happens with a lot of these things. And it's literally just maybe an afternoon, or I don't think it was more than a day. They show you some clips and you comment on them. And then it was in a flat that was pretending to be David's flat, but wasn't David's flat. It was opposite a park somewhere. I think somewhere in East London. I can't even remember where it was. And they gave you crisps. There was free crisps. I think we had some beers. So we just, there's lots of things like that come along, and I don't do all of them, but every now and again it's nice to get, I'm in the nice position with TV where I'm not on all the time. And I think because so much stuff is like panel shows, or even shows like that where you're not really, it's not a showcase for your comedic material. It's a sort of showcase for you as a personality, I suppose. But obviously it's nice, you get paid to do that. So I make a choice based on whether I like the show, the idea of the show, versus how much money they will pay me to do the show. And sometimes the amount of money they'll pay me to do the show is enough that I go, I'll do that show regardless. So I did a show called Best Man's Speech, which nobody saw. in which I had to, which I thought was a really nice idea, but I don't think they did it very well. Which I thought was going to be me teaching someone how to do a best man speech.
Yeah.
But they turned it into a bit more of a stunty show than it needed to be, and I think it would have been quite interesting having professional comedians teaching best men how to be funny in quite a difficult situation to do comedy. I think a wedding, and in the end, I couldn't even go to the weddings or anything, so it was like sort of slightly weird. But compared to the number of people who've seen that versus the amount of money they paid me to do it, that's probably the best payday I've had per audience member. So I was happy to do it for that reason. But but also what I like is in my career is that I haven't had to do much stuff like that, and I've really create most of my own work. And then someone like Taskmaster comes along, and I really wanted to do Taskmaster. In fact, having done Taskmaster, I sort of feel, and we're doing the Champion of Champions, but I sort of feel I'm not sure I'm that bothered about doing anything else on TV after doing Taskmaster, because it's sort of the zenith of what you can do on TV now. Which if someone offered me a stand-up show or a sketch show or something like that I could do on TV, that would be interesting to me. But it just doesn't happen anymore, and it's not going to happen to me. So I'll just do that stuff online.
Yeah, and you mentioned Taskmaster there, and we'll go on to that now. Now, if anyone's not seen series 10, I don't know where you've been, but this will contain spoilers.
I've already said I'm in the Champion of Champions, so it's too late to do spoilers now.
Oh yeah. Well, I want to know if you know this, but you might not know, how heavy is the actual Taskmaster trophy?
I do know how. It's just over there. Look, can you see it in the background? I'll go and get it. Hold on.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, Tom, it's not very heavy. It's made out of, I think it's made out of wood, but maybe it's hollow. I don't know. But it's not. I've been working out a lot, so maybe I'm very strong, but it's not hard to. It's big. It's full. I think that's actual size of Greg's head. I don't know how if they can't, put him in some kind of plaster of Paris to get this wonderful representation. I don't think so. I don't think it looks exactly like him. But no, it's a lovely thing to have. There's only, I suppose, maybe 11 of those out there now. Maybe 12 if series 12 has been completed. I had to hide it for like a long time because I wasn't allowed to give the results. So obviously I was broadcasting from here, and I was always terrified I was going to accidentally give something away.
Yeah.
It was a nice thing to win, though. I think it's a fairly arbitrary competition where I think I probably just about deserved to win it in terms of I won, I was first in 6 of the episodes. What I can't understand is how I was behind until the very last minute, because I'd won 6 episodes and one of them was a tie, and I'd lost the tiebreaker out of 10, which I think might be the best anyone's done in terms of individual episodes. But it was very exciting, and I genuinely would have been happy with that. I told Daisy that I'd have been happy. I said to her before, if this has been such fun, I don't care. I'm going to try and win it, but I don't care. But I don't care who wins, and I'll be glad if you win as well. And she said, I won't be glad if you win. And she wasn't, was she? She was quite upset. Yeah. And she was generally quite upset. And I think, the way I look at it for Daisy is, this is literally the best thing that will ever happen to me in my life. And Daisy has a proper career. So although I look and I've got that head, and I get to go on Taskmaster again, which is nice, she is on loads and loads of fantastic TV shows and dramas, and is selling a TV show to America. So on the whole,
she's doing all right.
And she was sort of, it's not about, like with the last series, I think Mike Wozniak just was the standout star of it in terms of someone who came to it without you knowing who he was, probably. I didn't know who he was, but you might not have known, and just absolutely nailed it. Sarah did great as well, but, I think Mike sort of won it in terms of probably getting work out of it. But I think for both me and Sarah, it was more important for me to win it than to even present myself well on it. So I wasn't even thinking, I've got to get in there with jokes. I was just thinking, how am I going to win this competition? So that was my impetus. So it wasn't a career decision for me. It was, I would really like to be Taskmaster champion.
Yeah, and we'll come back to Champions in a second. But as you know, Alex has got, or he's releasing a brand new book.
Yes.
Where he's hidden the head. Now, from knowing him personally on a more of a personal level. Like, I know him, but if I ever asked him, it'd be really cheeky. But do you have any tips and or hints of how to best find a clue from knowing Alex in a more of a Taskmaster way?
Yeah, well, no, because whatever he's done, there'll be some trick or trap to it, won't it? So anything that's obvious, the thing you've got with him is you're always looking out for the little secret way of doing something, but then he won't do it in that many things, and then so you've forgotten about the secret way of doing something when that comes along. So he's very good at anticipating the way people are going to go. I don't really know enough. I don't even know where he grew. I should know where he grew up because I probably talked to him about that on my podcast. When the Masquerade hair, which again is before your time, there's a guy called Kit Williams who buried this piece of jewelry quite near to where I live now, actually. And part of the way, I think someone cheated to find it in the end. Someone did solve it, but they were waiting for the equinox to dig it up, and I think someone else managed to find out the information by cheating. But it was basically, I think, close to where he grew up or something like that. So often you've got to think laterally like that in getting there. He did ask me for a piece of information that's a clue that will be in something, but I can't even remember what I chose. I think you have to go to one of my tweet podcasts or Twitter feed or something to find a word, but I can't remember what I chose. It was a while ago, so it'll be tricky. But good luck to whoever gets that. It'll be priceless.
Yeah, well, I reckon what would be really interesting is if the clue is hidden in like a whole series. If he's had this plan for years and he's written a whole series where each member of that series has actually said where it is.
Yeah, I mean could well be that. He's an extremely clever man, and Taskmaster is just a genius show. I mean, I'm delighted it's done so well, but he worked so hard to get that show together, and had to fight against people not understanding why it would work. The idea of doing the same people every week in a panel show, people were very resistant. Richard Osman talked about that with House of Games, which came up around about the same time. But it's obviously such a good idea because it's much more about getting, and you sort of have it with panel shows anyway, in that there's always a team captains and stuff. So it's a really fun idea, and it's great to be on it again because you're doing 10 panel shows in a year, and so you're getting paid 10 times. So that's all. Not that I'm obsessed with money, but it's not. It's all. That's a nice sort of element of it. But it's and I know how it's a show that comedians really, really want to be on. So I feel like very blessed to have got the chance. I slightly, I kind of feel I was sort of overwhelmed by it. We have recorded some of the stuff for the Champion of Champions. I think I'm allowed to say that because I think Alex has said it. And I was a lot more relaxed this time because I kind of thought it's not 10 shows. So, it's sort of it's an even more arbitrary, really, who wins this. And I just thought I really wanted to enjoy it. And I kind of relaxed a lot more and didn't just, I think I just bolded in with this series, which is the right way to win. Yeah. I just sort of went straight down the line, really, with all of them. And with this one, I think I did get to think a little bit more, that I'm not sure I was any more successful. We'll find out. It's hard to know. I don't know how everyone else did.
Yeah. Have you seen any of the international versions of the franchise of Taskmaster?
I haven't really, no. I've maybe seen a little bit of the American one, which I don't think it didn't work quite as well.
No, the American version was one of the ones that flopped, but the New Zealand version is as successful. Greg Davis did appear in the New Zealand version.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, because one of the contestants, Brindley Stint, had asked Greg if he could insult Jeremy Wells, who is the Taskmaster.
Right.
It's just Greg sat on his sofa, just having a go at Jeremy Wells and saying, "Don't make me have to come to you."
Right, that's good.
Yeah,
well, he's just a very naturally funny man. He's a brilliant guest on RHLSTP, the 2 times he's done it, because he's just. He's got so many stories and he's so likable, and and being insulted by him is one of the most joyous things that's happened to me. And I think he kept on pushing it with me because he really wanted to make me upset, but nothing he said really made me upset.
Yeah.
Only in I think in the Taskmaster podcast, I thought they kind of pushed it a bit far. He was kind of quite dismissive of me on the show. And that was the only thing that he actually upset me with, I think. So, it's certainly face to face. He's such a talent, but they both are. Alex is, he's amazing. He's it's sort of, he's very friendly, but you also slightly fear that he's plotting stuff
yeah.
even as he's being friendly in real life.
Yeah. Now going from one competition weekly show to another, do you still use any of your prizes you gained from Richard Osman's House of Games?
Well, I lost a lot. Well, some of them got lost in the post, which I'm very annoyed about. So that's why the second time I went for the doll again, because the first doll, which I would, I thought I can do something with this, got lost in the post. But actually, that doll has just stayed up on my whiskey shelf ever since I got it. So I've not done anything with it. I got an amulet that was meant to make me immortal, but that I just put that on the shelf. I think it's still there. There was the fondue turned up, but it wasn't branded House of Games. It was just a fondue, which I was quite annoyed with, and I haven't used that. I did put some tools in the tool chest, and I think that might be all I've actually got from them, because there were other things, because I did quite well the first time I was on it. So I think there was 3 or 4 prizes that I won the first time, and 2 or 3 of them went missing. It's nice to have I've got the trophies. But it sort of feels like they feel too precious to use on the whole, and I think down the line, I can probably eBay them for charity or something like that. So it's sort of, though I did say I was going to give away the fondue set, and Richard Osman said that's not on, you can't do that. I mean, as a joke, I think, but I did in the end. The person who won it didn't claim it, so I've still got it.
Yeah.
But no, I haven't used them. But I would like this. I never got the suitcase, and the suitcase is the big one. I think that I probably would use. Because that on an airplane carousel, you would know when your suitcase was coming if you had that suitcase with Richard Osman's face.
Yeah, and it's a popular concept for the BBC, because the BBC never took a Taskmaster and never brought it to where it is, because even though Channel 4 is doing really well with it, the BBC are doing really well with Richard Osman's House of Games. And did you feel like it was a lot more easier on House of Games, or is Taskmaster easier?
I mean, it's House of Games you record it all in one day, and that's quite demanding. It's quite hard to concentrate, and it's quite a hard quiz. I'm pretty good at it, and I think most comedians are good at, especially those ones where you've got to smash things together. But often, because I think that's sort of our job, but often my mind would, there would be things I knew, and there was a couple of moments where there was an answer I knew, and then 3 minutes had passed, and suddenly they're on the next question, and I actually zoned out to someone else's one, and I was waiting for it to come to me, and I actually don't know if I fell asleep or just wasn't concentrating. And there was a couple of times where I started to question my brain. So there's Thursday. By the Thursday one, it's really hard. You just had lunch usually by then, I think, and it's your brain. So it's quite demanding, whereas Taskmaster just was nearly all fun all the way. So you're just playing, and it's done much more kind of leisurely, apart from the studios. And it doesn't feel hard. You either can do it or you can't do it. The ones that I couldn't do on Taskmaster are just excruciating, trying to draw that thing behind the two-way mirror, and I didn't understand that one at all. And trying to do the backwards talking where I overthunk it when you've screwed it up.
Yeah.
And that there's no way out of it. Sometimes they don't show a few of your tasks, but they're not going to show one where you make an idiot. They're going to show the ones where you make an idiot of yourself.
Yeah.
So those are sort of excruciating, and they often, a couple of them happened at the end of the day and sort of spoilt the day, because you'd go and thinking, oh God, why did I do so badly on drawing that duck?
Yeah.
Mate, no, I don't. It's sort of weird. I don't feel like the couple of ones I did well on, I got disqualified. Everyone got disqualified from. The one I was really proud of was pouring the water into the high cup, and I did that really quickly and well. And then I'd stepped on the green, before it even started, basically. So that was annoying. So I knew I was not going to get anywhere with it. But yeah, it's such fun. It's honestly, they're both shows are really fun. Richard Osman, and again, you realise with these people, they're so good at what they do. And Richard Osman is just a literal Goliath of TV entertainment, in that everything he does is amazing. He's so easily funny. He's funnier than most comedians, much more sharp-witted, and he's so patient to do these shows. I mean, I think Pointless, they record 3 or 4 of those a day, and then they do it for months on end, and yet they stay quite up during the recordings. It must be a sort of living hell. And I think even House of Games, you know, the nice thing about House of Games, I think, is they do them pretty quickly, and you do them in a day. But he's there every day doing the same job. It's so demanding, and he stays so chill and friendly, and you know, he's got a nice little barb side to him, which comes out against me particularly. But yeah, absolutely hugely admire him. You know, and again, it's just another example. Him and Alex and are just examples of people who really deserve what they've got, and the millions and millions of pounds that will come with that.
Yeah. Now going way back in your career, what was it like writing for Steve Coogan?
Well, at the time, you know, he wasn't. I suppose he wasn't Steve Coogan. No, we knew he was something special, but we were, you know, we were just starting out. I think the thing is, we didn't really know how lucky we were. So there's a show called On the Hour, which we wrote for on radio, and it was about a third job probably. We'd done stuff for a show called Weekending. We'd been doing stand up, and we'd done a couple of little bits and pieces. And then Armando asked us to be on the team, and it was sort of weird because we weren't. It wasn't like we were in a room with the cast. We would hand stuff in, and the cast would then go and improvise around it, or you know, with the Alan Partridge stuff, we would write lines for him to do for Alan Partridge. But they sort of create the characters, and I was aware that he was a major talent. We actually did a show called The Dumb Show in Edinburgh, which was Patrick Marber, Stuart Lee, Simon Munnery, Steve Coogan, and myself. So we tried to do a sort of sketch show together. So I worked with him much more closely in that, but that was sort of intimidating because they already knew that. Well, he especially knew he was, you know, a big star, and Patrick acted like a big star, though I don't think he was quite as competent a performer as Steve. And they were, you know, and we were coming up as sort of writers, and although I'd done a lot of performing at university, they sort of saw me as the writer, not as the performer. So it was a quite fraught time. But yeah, it's in a way, it's a shame nothing came of The Dumb Show. And again, towards the end of, you know, hardly anyone came and saw it. Steve won the Perrier that year with his solo show, but no one was really aware of our show. Towards the end, some TV producers started coming, and I remember Patrick Marber suddenly getting much more behind the idea. But you know, you sort of think, oh, what would have happened if The Dumb Show had gone to TV and been a sketch show? And you know, it's an incredible cast. Certainly, as you look back at, you know, and Simon Munnery is probably the least well-known person out of those five. Is probably the biggest comedy genius out of all of them.
Yeah.
And you know, it was at a point where sketch shows hadn't really taken off. You know, I suppose the next sketch show that really took off was League of Gentlemen, or the Fast Show maybe, in League of Gentlemen, and what we did on TV a little bit, but not to the same extent. So it'd been interesting to see if in 1992 or whenever it was, if that had transferred to TV, what would have happened with it. But there's, like, you know, you look through the history books and there's dozens of sketch shows that, you know, have had brilliant casts. Six Pair of Pants is one that always leaps to mind. But there's loads of attempts at sketch shows that don't come off. But, you know, it'd be interesting to see. I think we'd have had a horrible time. We rubbed each other up the wrong way, really. Yeah. And, you know, it was, again, 5 men. It would have been a shame to have a sketch show with no women in it. But I think in the 90s that was fairly usual. It was, you know, I'm a big comedy fan, and I knew Steve was going to be a big thing. And the weird thing with On the Hour is we were involved in the day-to-day, but then we ended up not doing it because of rights issues, because we wanted to own rights to the characters that we'd co-created, which was an argument worth having. And, you know, if we had ended up with rights to any of those characters, but especially even like 1% of Alan Partridge, would have been quite a nice little thing to have had over the last 30 years. But again, I'm sort of glad it didn't come off. And the fact it didn't come off meant we went off and did our own thing and went our own way. And I think, you know, I often think about that, what would have happened if we, and for me, it was a bit, because Stu was making quite good money at stand-up at that time. I was very poor, and just the weekly wage from writing 10 minutes of the day-to-day was just mind-blowing to me, you know. And it wasn't a huge amount of money, but it was just a huge amount of money to 25-year-old me or whatever it was. And you know, I often think, I look at that crew of people, and if I'd jumped ship and left Stu and said, well, I'm going to do it still, and I don't care about the characters, you know, it's interesting to know where I would be and whether that would be a better or worse place. I'm very, very happy with my life and how it's panned out and where I am. And I'm very happy with my level of fame or non-fame. So I think it's worked out best for me. I don't think I would have, but maybe if I'd done that, I would have been a writer rather than a performer at all.
Yeah.
So, it's one of those big decisions when you look back and think how life would have forked out at that point.
Yeah.
And what I might have been doing, because a lot of those guys have gone on to, Peter Bainham, who basically took our place from the Day Today, is writes Borat's films and has done, and is an absolute comedy genius, wrote with Chris Morris and everything. So it might, I might have been writing on the Alan Partridge sitcom and stuff like that. So it's an interesting thing to think about. But but if I had that, I wouldn't have had everything else I've done, and I wouldn't, and I really love the stuff I'm doing now, and certainly the more esoteric stuff I'm doing now. And I just, and even the esoteric stand-up shows I've done, I sort of realize, as if I'd become a sort of household name or an established comedian, I wouldn't have been allowed to do any of this stuff.
Yeah.
So, I feel fortunate because I'm more interested in just experimentation, and trying stuff out and trying to find interesting comedy. Whether I fail or succeed, I'm more interested in that journey than in being a star, So it's, or even being a super successful writer writing American sitcoms, which would be interesting.
Yeah. Now speaking of program that you were on, where did the idea of This Morning with Richard Not Judy come from?
It was sort of my idea, and it had come from. I initially had thought of doing it without Stuart. I think it was an Edinburgh show initially, where I just thought it was so expensive to go to Edinburgh, and you lost money, and so I had this idea of doing a show which was sort of improvised, just based loosely around a morning TV show format, but it wasn't really. In which we'd auction tickets and gave away a car to someone, So we had all this extra money because we weren't doing it the official way. And we weren't spending any money on adverts and stuff. So it was like a morning show, and it was word of mouth. And if no one came, you could get in for 5p. And if loads of people came, it might cost you £40 to get in. So it was kind of, you're the person with the, it was kind of fun, but we gave loads of stuff away. And it was just using that format. And then that developed. And then when we'd done Fist of Fun and we were looking for something else, I'd actually tried to do it with Nick Owen, who was a genuine sort of breakfast time presenter, who I met up with to talk about doing it. And then we realized, they were asking us about doing it. When Fist of Fun had finished and the BBC didn't want any more, then Paul Jackson, who'd worked on The Young Ones and lots of other amazing shows, sort of was a big fan of ours and came to the BBC and said, oh, you've got to have a Lee and Herring show. So we sort of thought, oh, well, let's do this. We did it in Edinburgh again together and made it a bit more of what we were sort of aiming to do. And then it went quite well. And we just thought, well, let's use that format. So it was just, we watched a lot of daytime TV and we thought, well, it'd be fun to use the format of daytime TV. But it was much more than that, really. It was just, we just liked the idea of being on a sofa and as sort of perennial students, still sort of acting in a studenty way and doing our show in that format. But I was very influenced by things like the Banana Splits, and which was like a kids show with people in costumes and that we would just throw to cartoons and stuff. And I really fancied doing a live show, which again wasn't really Stu's. Yeah, Stu didn't really want to do that, but I kind of persuaded him. And also it was much easier to do it live because with the Fist of Fun we would record for 3 or 4 hours and it was a nightmare. So you would record for 45 minutes and it would be on for 45 minutes and whatever happened. And I loved that. And I thought we were good at it and doing the live stuff. So, and it really appealed to me again to do a comedy show, which again, I suppose it happened a little bit with the podcast stuff. That went out at an unusual time. So no one was doing comedy at 12:15 or whatever on a Sunday. And it kind of meant we were under the radar and no one was looking for rude stuff and we didn't swear, but we just did loads of challenging stuff really within that time. So it was a load of fun to do. It was really hard work. Stu didn't enjoy the double act and that much anyway. So there was always a bit of tension with Stu. And if you look at the second series of Fist of Fun, I think by his own admission, he says he wasn't really even trying to do well in the second series of Fist of Fun. Whereas I think This Morning, there was loads of really good stuff in it, and it still holds up, I think. And people still are very fond of it, which is nice. But again, it's one of those programs that, partly because it was on at 12:15 on a Sunday, nobody really saw. So it was fun to be allowed to do what we wanted. But we were sort of aware, the bosses would say, look, do you really want to do this sketch? Because if you do, it's going to be very hard to get you another series. And we go, no, we really want to do this sketch, and we would do it. And so we were always sort of slightly too rebellious, I think. So we really take off. Though I feel if we'd had another series, it might have become a big thing
Yeah.
because it was starting to. But I'm sort of glad it didn't, because I think it would have destroyed us, and I think it was the right time for us to go our separate ways as well.
Yeah.
when it finished.
Now coming forward to the present day or near about, for your podcast, Realistica, how do you book your guests to come on? Because you get really big names on.
Yeah, it's hard. It's the worst thing about it by miles. I just asked them, really. I tried to do it myself because I think I've considered having a booker, because I might get people I wouldn't usually get. But the thing is, I might get people who I don't want as well if I did that, so I think luckily within the industry, I've kind of got enough respect, I think, from people that most people are kind of keen to do it. I do pay a bit of money, which is unusual, but not much by the standards of the bigger names. But I think it's sort of like a kudos thing that people do want to do it. But I'm just surprised, if you ask, I guess, again, I was one of the first people to do it. I direct messaged Stephen Fry, or maybe just tweeted him, and he said he would do it. I didn't know him at all. So, you can go through agents, and occasionally that works. But basically, if you can find Twitter's been great for it, because, you can tweet someone. I've just tweeted Bo Burnham. He hasn't responded. Often people don't respond. But he doesn't follow me, so I can't direct message him. So I just tweeted him, go, do you fancy doing my podcast? And then sometimes they go, oh yeah. And sometimes they ignore you. And sometimes they say, I can't do it now. Can you try again? But people have been so lovely. And, I think it's always a double thing where I try to get bigger names than me on who will get interest, but I've always tried to promote newer acts as well.
Yeah.
And so I think all those newer acts are very kind of want to be on it, and are very pleased to be on it usually. And it's a big thing. I think the bigger acts sort of appreciate that they are also, they're the name that draws an audience in, but that I'm also doing something hopefully that's quite good for the businesses in general. So, by introducing new people and giving them a chance. It's a hard show to do, though. And I think, you can get people on too early and they don't do as well as they would do if they'd had a bit more time. It's actually because it's genuinely no prep from them. They don't know what I'm going to ask. And I don't generally tell people even the areas I'm going to go into. And I often don't know, I make notes, but I often go a completely different way. And, you've got to be, you've got to create an entertaining 60 to 90 minutes in front of an audience, which to most people is a pretty terrifying idea. Some comedians, most comedians think that's a pretty terrifying idea. So it's finding people I think will be good for it, people that I respect enough and like enough. And it's kind of fun to do a traditional interview and find out some autobiography, but it's also fun to improvising comedy. I really love doing the Bob Mortimer one, where you're sort of riffing with Bob Mortimer, but also enjoying Bob Mortimer being very funny. But that's it. There's a lot of talented people out there. So usually one of us will be good. If both of us are on form, then it's a great show. If one of us is on form, then it's still a good show. If it sort of goes badly, it's still a good show, because it's, the car crash element of it is fun as well. So, it's sort of a little bit bulletproof. But yeah, just asking and hoping for the best. I would like to get some of the big American names. I'd like to get, which is obviously harder to do it live, but now I'm doing them remotely, you never know. But I'd like to get some film. If movie stars were over doing junkets and stuff, I'd like to get them on, because I think it would be interesting. I'm not like other interviewers really, I think. So certainly if you're George Clooney, he will not have been interviewed in the way that I would interview him, I don't think. So we'll see if that ever happens.
He wouldn't know what hit him.
He wouldn't, but also if I tweet him, he's not going to go, yeah, sure. No. So with him, you'd have to go. I tried to get Paul McCartney, and
it'd be a nightmare.
But I got through to his publicist, who was listening to Realistica as he got the email. He said, I'm a big fan of the show. I don't think he can do it, but we'll see for the future. So, it's, that you never know. And I think that's it. That's what's interesting about it, is that it can, you can throw your net wide and hope for the best. And then occasionally someone just phenomenal will agree to do it. But I don't understand why they do, really.
Yeah. Well, for me, I try the Twitter route, but it doesn't, for me, it doesn't always work. And then sometimes agents get back to me and admit, and it doesn't always work. Some people have the direct messages open and you try and get through, but it doesn't always work. But then I just thought it it's impressive how like some people like you and like Alex are really nice enough to come and do these things, and Alex was one of the first proper names, first proper person to come on and do an interview, and that was incredible. It meant that more people saw my 9 different YouTube channels and saw what nonsense I was up to, and making comedy short films and me crying and me appearing on the British Comedy Guide website, which I never knew would be possible because I'm a massive fan of the website.
Nice.
And Rehost was sponsored, I think, by the British Comedy Guide.
Well, they put it up. Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
That's where we initially put it up. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, well, that's good. But it's just there's no harm in asking, and no one's gonna. I think especially for you, if they don't want to do it, they're not going to remember you in 5 years' time. I mean, I get asked a lot, and I'm getting asked a lot this year, and I'm not doing many this year because I've not been well, and it's a good excuse to not do them. So I don't know why I did your one, but I think that's the thing. Sometimes just if you ask, go, oh yeah, I'm in a good mood, let's do that. And if I just said no, get lost. Do you have any idea who I am? Then you haven't lost anything, and I maybe lost something. So yeah, I think it's not, and I think the right thing comes along, and people go, yeah, no, I'll give that a go. So it's people are generally pretty nice, and people generally will try and do stuff, I think. And obviously, there's so many podcasts now. I think it's a bit harder to do them all. And also, I'm conscious I don't want to overload people with me talking, so I try to be a bit selective with it. But if it's a really good idea, or there's something about the person, I just thought it was for you. I just thought, okay, there's something going on here. Let's give this give this one a chance. And that's fun, and it's sort of no skin off. I think over this year you've realized, one has realized that an hour in the middle of the day, I probably wouldn't have done anything in the last hour, and we've done this, and this is good for you, and it's been fun for me. So that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
So.
And now we'll draw in with the final question, a question that people will be wanting to know. How well do you reckon you'll do, without giving any spoilers, because you said you've started filming, how well do you reckon you'll do in Champions of the Champions?
I really don't know. I just sort of think I'm not allowed to say how many episodes it is, but it's not many episodes. And I just think there's, over with Taskmaster, you can have a show, you can have one show where you get 0 points, and you can have one show where you get 25 points, and it just depends which show that is. It depends what mood Greg's in. I'm going to work a lot harder on the prize task, but I think everyone will, because it's going to be a small number of prize tasks, so everyone's going to think hard about it. I do quite well on the tasks in the studio, but obviously also I'm playing against the creme de la creme of the last 5 series, so I know Ed's going to be very competitive. I think Ed might see it and be too competitive and want it too much. I sort of feel I just want to enjoy going back and doing it one more time.
Yeah.
And so I'm not even really thinking, if I win, great. But if I win, I sort of still think it's not a proper series.
Yeah.
If we did 10 episodes, fine. But, a couple of episodes or whatever it will be, isn't really enough to determine who's generally the best, I think. So I just want to enjoy it, and and it's a great lineup of people. I kind of fancy either Lou or Lisa to get it, I think.
Yeah.
But it's very hard. It's really hard to call.
Well, I reckon if you win, because you said it on the podcast, Ed might feel so bad about losing, give you the podcast, because
well, that's that should happen. But
because I like that idea of like you get it until like the next winner gets it, and then they get to it for as many longer, and then once the program ends, they can go back, and then
I mean, I don't know why Ed. I mean, Ed is. I mean, he's a bigger fan of the show than I am. I like the show. But he's a proper super fan of it. He's doing so many podcasts. Even I can look at him and go, "You're doing so many podcasts."
Yeah.
That it's sort of weird that he is, and now going back and doing all the other series. It's kind of like, okay, well, but he's I think I was going to say let him have it, but he's got so much else going on that he doesn't need it. I need it. I need that Taskmaster podcast. You're right.
And it is a good idea. And then when you Google Taskmaster on Apple Podcasts, which is the main place you you listen to podcasts, you can see how many fans of the show made their own podcast. And Alex was
Right.
telling me how this podcast came about because of a fan podcast and was
Right.
so popular. He wanted to make this popular. And I
Right.
think,
Well, it makes sense. You know,
Yeah.
it's, you know, and the, what I think, sadly, you know, the big names and the big companies have realized that podcasting is a very cheap way to make stuff that can make proper money now. So, you know, if you have people like, I mean, I've got Ed and James Acaster coming on my podcast in the last run of the ones we did at the Clapham Grand, and like they're so popular, it's insane. So the tickets for that have just sold out in a day.
wow.
You know, they were doing live streaming and loads of people are buying tickets to that. So they've got this level of fame. Admittedly, comes a bit from being on TV and winning awards and stuff, but you know, it's actually they are getting, I don't know how many more downloads they get per month than me on off menu, but you know, it's proper money, and if they're getting the money, then it's much better than you would get in TV now. So it's that, I think it's sad because the podcast used to be a bit Wild West and a bit like where you could be esoteric and you could do stuff and no one cared about money, and now the money people have come in. But then also that's good because we can make money doing podcasts. So that's not which was again very useful over the last year where I wasn't earning anything else particularly. So it's, you know, I think they've realized, and Alex will realize, and Ed will realize that for the amount of work that goes into that, that's a pretty good return, I would think.
Now to wrap up this fantastic interview, would you ever make RHOistopher paid? Because Apple's released a new thing called Apple Subscription, where you got the choice of either doing it free or subscription based.
I don't think I would. I think what I like about about podcasts, and there's occasional bits of content that you do have to pay for, but on the whole, not. Or you can come to a live show and pay for that. But what I like about it is sort of, and what I've always sort of worked on is that if people have money and can give some money, there are ways for them to give money. But if people can't, they still get to listen to it. And I think it makes sense both on a fairness level, that I don't want to be saying you've got to pay £2 to listen to my thing. But it also makes sense, I think, in terms of getting, I guess if the podcast became so big that everyone would definitely download it, even if it was, you know, a quid or two ago, then you'd think about it. But I've always said I'd keep it free. And I think it makes sense because then you get more people listening to it, and the way you generate income is by more people listening. You know, if for every 100 people listen to it, probably, you know, 3 or 4 of them might contribute something at some point. So, you know, there's 97 people listening for free and 3 people giving some money. But if those 3 people can tell 10 people to listen to it, whatever, it builds and builds. Or if 50 people tell one person to listen to it, then that's another 100 people. So it's another 3 people. So as I say, it was never an economical decision, and I always liked the fact that I was doing something for nothing. And you know, I think ads are enough. You know, I resisted ads for a long time, but it does make sense to have ads, and people don't care. I thought people would be annoyed, but no one seems to mind. And the fact that you can just listen to it and provide us with an income, I think is enough for me without saying, "Oh, now I need you to give me £2 to listen to my podcast." But you know, I've had this thing called monthly badges probably before. If we thought of doing it as a business, it would probably have done quite well for us because we sort of did Patreon on our own with monthly badges. And if people want to pay money for it, again, it used to be £1 a month, and now people do ask people for a little bit more. But it's not even £1 a podcast. Certainly not if you can include all the podcasts. It's very, very cheap if you include all the podcasts. And you know, and a few people do it, but enough people do it to sort of pay some of the expenses of doing the podcast. And then, you know, it seems to me, I don't think that's the way to go with it. And I think, you know, I think ads probably is the way to go with it, with podcasts, as long as you keep them entertaining and keep them in the spirit of the show and they don't get too overwhelming. But yeah, I don't think so. So, like, you know, and all the things I'm doing on Twitch, I'm basically doing for free. But I think, you know, that's for the people who like you. And I think what I've learned over this this last 20 years where I've been working on my own is, you know, that's, you build up your audience with my stand-up stuff. When I came back to stand-up in 2004, you know, I was lucky to get 50 to 100 people coming to see me, and I've just kept on going out every year, and it would get slightly bigger every year. And that's how it takes a long time. So it's not like getting on TV and suddenly you can go and play 10,000 seats somewhere. But it's much more satisfying to think, you know, I did this venue last year and it was half full and now it's full. Or I did last year, I did the small venue in town, now I'm in the medium-sized venue, and you know, to know that you've got that audience through doing good work over a period of time and then recommending you to other people is, for me, the best thing about this job. So, you know, the fact the podcast has grown, the fact that my stand-up shows have grown, and the fact that I can now occasionally perform to 1,500 people at some gigs where I was literally doing 5 people at some gigs 20 years ago. You know, it feels like I've achieved something. So I think by keeping everything free and being open about it, it does mean when I ask for money, people go, yeah, no, of course we'll give you, when I do a Kickstarter campaign to pay for the filming or whatever, people will chip in because they'll go, hey, I can afford to. I know this is a voluntary thing, but also I've had 50 to 100 hours of entertainment in the last year. So yeah, 10 quid seems fair, whatever seems fair to you, So I'd rather have that people pay if they can or if they want to. Even if, Jeff Bezos is listening and says, I'm not going to give any money, that's fine. If he doesn't want to pay, that's fine. If he goes, I've got $15 billion, maybe I could give Rich $1 billion. He might do that money. He might go, he's so nice. He's been so nice. Just give him $1 billion. It's nothing. So, you never, that might happen. So you've got to keep out for that.
Yeah.
So, to you.
Yeah, it could happen to anyone because he's everywhere. Because he's got voice assistants built in people's homes.
That's true.
Yeah. So, thank you for coming on. Now,
no problem, Tom.
If people want to listen to your stuff or find more about you, where would they be able to see all your stuff?
Well, wherever you get your podcasts, RHLSTP, if you put RHLSTP or my name in, you should get lots of podcasts come up. I've got a YouTube channel, Herring1967. I'm on Twitter, Herring1967. I've got a website, richardherring.com, which probably has links to everything if you can find it there. So yeah, so that's basically it. But yeah, just if you use Google, you'll find all of the various, and there's something for everyone. But RHLSTP is probably where you should start, and then you can move on to stone clearing if you've got a very strong stomach.
Yeah, and I hope you all enjoy listening to this. If wherever you are listening to this, because you might be listening to this on YouTube, if you are subscribed, if you listen to this on the British Comedy Guide website, I'm probably looking at it and thinking I'm over the moon that have appeared yet again on the British Comedy Guide website. Such an amazing website. They always love it when I promote them. So free advertisement. Could they sponsor? Fingers crossed. But anyway, guys, thank you guys for watching yet again another video. Time out. Bye.